That concludes questions for oral answer. Would some honourable member care to move that the House take note of miscellaneous business?
Mr. Speaker.
Chris Hipkins.
Mr. Speaker, I so move. Mr. Speaker, it says everything about the national government's priorities that in the week when they have been hocking off state houses up and down the country, they're willing to find $11 million to buy a luxury apartment in New York for the diplomats working over there. Hocking off state houses that everyday New Zealanders live in while they can find $1 million for a luxury condo for the diplomats living in New York. I want to know why Murray McCully doesn't replace Nick Smith and Paula Bennett in the housing portfolio, because then we might actually get some action on improving the state of state housing in New Zealand. If Murray McCully can bring peace to the Middle East, as we are now being told, why can't he sort out the New Zealand housing crisis? That is what we want to know. If the government can't find money for cold and mouldy school buildings all up and down the country, why can it find millions of dollars for charter schools that miraculously go unaccounted for, that no one can explain where they have been spent? If the government can't find money for teachers, nurses, the police and a myriad of other public servants who basically have had their wages frozen for the last decade or so, how is it that they can find money for a wage explosion at the highest levels of the public service where the managers are getting massive pay rises? If the government can't find the money to keep its promises to the people of Northland to build them 10 more bridges, why can they find $26 million for that great vanity exercise for the Prime Minister that is the referendum on the flag that New Zealanders have said they do not want? This is a government full of self-importance who have become so arrogant and out of touch with New Zealanders that they seem to think that there is one set of rules for them and another set of rules for anybody else. We've got Te Oroa Flavel, who thinks that he can interfere in the programming decisions of Māori television when there is coverage unfavourable to him and to the government. We've got John Key, who sends the police in to raid media outlets when they behave in ways that are unfavourable to the Prime Minister, and we have absolute contempt from the government when it comes to doing their jobs that involves releasing information. They ignore the Official Information Act, they ignore parliamentary questions, they simply do whatever they want with absolute contempt for the people of New Zealand who deserve better. So, Mr. Speaker, let's return to where I began, to the fire sale of state houses. John Key promised New Zealanders before the last election, and it was a promise in their campaign, there would be no more asset sales if the national government was re-elected. Nobody saw the fine print except for the millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of state houses that they're going to hawk off in a fire sale. First of all, they said it was going to be to the community and voluntary sector because they were closer to the communities those houses are designed, those houses are there for. That was the first promise. But oh no, the community and voluntary sector didn't want them, couldn't run them. So now they're talking about hocking them off to the Aussies. Hocking them off to the Aussies is what we've come to under this national government. We're not going to own anything if this current government will continue in office for very much longer. So this has been, the government's state house selling off has been a boon for private property developers who are picking up ex-state houses, demolished state houses, vacant state house land at fire sale prices, or in some cases they're even being given it, and they are making huge returns on the redevelopment process. And what, of course, does the government end up getting out of it? What does the taxpayer end up getting out of it? More private houses, but not more houses for people who can't afford to buy their own home. And let's not mention the surplus. Let's not mention that surplus that was the cornerstone. Don't mention the surplus, the cornerstone of the national government's re-election campaign. They didn't say they were going to deliver a surplus, they said they'd already delivered a surplus, and it hasn't arrived, it hasn't eventuated, and it's not even on the horizon. This is a government that have completely lost their way. They have their priorities all wrong. It is not a government that is there for ordinary, everyday working New Zealanders who are trying hard to get ahead. It is a government that is only interested in the top 2%. Not all of the New Zealanders who can't afford to live in luxury New York apartments. Not all the New Zealanders who can't afford, who don't earn the massive managerial salaries in the state sector that have blown up under this government. No, they're not interested in those New Zealanders. It's time we had a government for all New Zealanders, not just those in the top 2%.
The question is,